assessing a lot of, trying to decide what is character for the town. I still think the bottom line, the output, is really not going to be that bad, and it does, on the form, it absolutely addresses things in a very, very good way. On the density allowance, I don't think it's going to be, I think these minor tweaks and the reality of what market is, I don't think it's going to harm this town immediately, but I think in 10 years, we're going to look back and say, wow. When we can look 10 years ago, I remember in 2001, which I guess is 15 years ago, when I got asked to run for mayor. And the town, the makeup of the people, the type of people, the economics of who could live here, the thought processes of people was 80-20, 70-30, opposite exactly what it is now. And I think the community that's here now wants a lot of these things that are changing. And I think, we've got to be careful because there are that 30% that don't want these things, and how do we make sure that they don't get quashed, that they don't are disrupted. And so that weighs heavily in my mind and heart of what is the impact of these changes. And I feel like we've got to represent the majority. I think there's enough protections for the minority of what people want. And so that's, but I don't disagree with you. I think you've pegged it right on the nose. It's just what will happen as a result of this. And I don't feel that the actual impact on usage and density will be all that much with some of these controls in there. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if we leave it as is, I mean, somebody contacted us today. We got a ton of emails, and I responded to a lot of them. But that the right thing is to do nothing. Well, to do nothing is to do something. And I don't know if this will end up preventing the so-called, I don't want to call it rare, but the new home constructions we've been seeing that people are concerned about. Hopefully it will, because people don't want it. But I've looked at some of those new homes, and as much as I disagree with them, they're not horrific. They're just houses that I don't want for myself, that I hate to see next to myself. But I walk up and down Dudley in different neighborhoods on Sunday, and I wasn't horrified. I saw a lot of houses that would fit this code that I thought were just as abysmal in certain ways, where the cars were parked in front of the house on the side of the driveway. So, I don't know what we can do, but I feel like this is a community decision that a strong majority of the community wants most of what's in here. And I think at this point, I don't think it's going to harm us to pass it forward, and I think we need to move on with. So hopefully I'm right.
Councilor Cilio.
Can I respectfully disagree with both of you on one point, and that's about that. I do think that this. I got 3 points I want to make. The first of which is that I think that this actually is a deeply conservative document and very preservationist in nature. And I actually think that's a result of the fact that this was arrived at through a very lengthy and very public process that took a lot of community input in, and a lot of that community input was in favor of limiting density in the long term and ensuring that the town fabric stays the town fabric. Everywhere you look in the code, that is really baked in. I think if you had something that was a more transformational document, you would have something maybe that looks more like a pure form-based code, where you have mixed use everywhere to do some of the things I said earlier about maximizing the reuse of the building and ensuring the kind of mixed uses that maybe historically pertained in the town back in the teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, before there were these kind of suburban zoning codes that came in sort of the early middle part of the century. Which, by the way, because our town grew up before that, are horribly unsuited to the way our town was actually built in the first place. And so the longer you leave that in place, the more you're going to have new buildings that could develop that look like what Montgomery Avenue looks like today. and looks like what certain buildings in downtown and their setbacks and large parking lots out front look like today. You can picture the ones in the downtown area that are like that, because those are ones that got built post our current zoning code. The longer that stays in place, the more change you will see from, I think, the Narberth that you know. And the document that's here, if you started really with a purely new urbanist, form-based code that didn't have a lot of use restrictions in it, you get something pretty transformational. But over a very lengthy period of public input and comment and hammering things out and trying to make it match, I think it matches very well, actually, our current density patterns. And if you do an overlay of the zoning map that's here with our current density, you'll see a couple of hotspots in the downtown area, actually even extending down South Narberth Avenue, which I think was the genesis of some of the things we talked about earlier tonight. And then in the northeast part of town, along Montgomery Avenue and in Iona, where all the row houses are, kind of up there, there's a second hotspot. And so the zoning map was developed very much to overlay with what's there today. And also, you'll notice that by right uses are actually very limited compared to what you'd have if you had just a wide open code. And it's a lot of what's inherited into this code, both in terms of use restrictions around the borough on a by right basis, and even to some extent on a conditional use basis and special exemption basis, are very similar to what we have today. Residential remains by and large residential, commercial remains by and large commercial, or mixed use in the sense of in the downtown area, you've got business on the first floor, apartments above. So I think what you wound up with through all this comment is a fairly conservative document that actually, to get to a second point here, I and a lot of constituents that I talk to, not everybody, moved to Narberth because it is urban to some degree, right? It's, you know, there are a lot of folks who moved out of the city to get to a city in a good school district, right? Not to move to like Valley Forge, right? Not to pick on our neighbors, but you know, there are plenty of places to move that are not urban, like small view urban, right? We're not Barcelona, but we're, you know, we got our downtown area with amenities and movie theaters you can walk to. You don't have to drive your car on the weekends. You know, not living in a cul-de-sac and having to hop in your car every time you want to go to the store. That's, you know, part of the definition of urban. And, you know, I think one of the reasons we're attractive and we're becoming more attractive as a community is that we are that, right? So you've got some part of the town, and sometimes it overlaps. These groups are not like two groups of people. It's lots of people with different opinions, so there's a lot of overlapping, who want to see more mixed use and maybe more density, because that's kind of the mindset they come from. You've got folks who want to see limits to density and things to stay roughly the same. If I look at where the code ended up, I feel like it ended up very much aligned with like finding a way to keep things to stay as the same as they can. So as a set point for going forward, I think it limits the amount of change you're going to see. And you know, that actually means it's a decent set of compromises to build from in the future, and then, you know, determine as things go how much further change you want. The last thing I want to point out, specifically the Montgomery County area, the Montgomery Avenue area, that was actually one of the biggest changes in this code. Like, most of it really preserves the built environment. Montgomery Avenue is the one part of the code, and you know, other folks who spend a lot of time with the document maybe can elaborate on this more than I can, but you know, right now that's the part of town that was built in a period where we had high minimum parking requirements and really wide setbacks, and you got, you know, pretty busy roads, so people built quasi strip mall kind of stuff there. Of all the parts of town that I can see changing based on what's in the code here, Montgomery Avenue is probably the biggest. Like, not immediately. None of this will happen immediately. It takes time for people to turn over buildings and things to change. So it's like boiling a frog. You know, you see a little bit of change here and there, and then you look up in 20 years, and all of a sudden it's different. I think most of the town, because we're supplanting the old code with the new code, if we pass it and it stays roughly like it is, what you see is not a ton of change over time. But Montgomery Avenue, I think you probably will see change over time as things get redeveloped. And Montgomery Avenue does permit, that's 5B, right? Scroll back. That does permit apartment buildings and multi-use. So, no? A, B, M, U by right uses in 5B? What am I imagining? Did that change?
Yes.
Yeah,
A long time ago.
Oh, shit. Which draft am I looking at? Well, it did.
Yeah. Big chart.
But the setbacks are a lot different. So,
Yes, and the parking is different.
the setbacks and the parking are different. So at a minimum, you're going to see buildings that are a lot closer to the street with entrances off sidewalk and parking behind. Kind of like what you see in the downtown overlay district right now.
Right.
So I'd say if you're looking for kind of transformation in the built environment in the town, you're most likely to see it there because of the fact that it makes that part of town look more like what's in the downtown overlay district, and that's
Meant to reflect our downtown.
it's meant to reflect the fact that that is a multi-use, multi-service, more dense area of town that's on bus transit.
Right.
I think that's how that shook out that way. Now I'm a little surprised that I'm looking at the wrong chart.
So it's getting late. Does anyone else have anything to add, or kind of can we move to a vote?
Sorry, Chuck.
Okay. All in favor of moving the form-based zoning code draft 4.1 with the 5 changes that I outlined previously to a hearing? Please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
We have one change.
What is
We
your
have an
change?
objection in this version.
I'm kind of procedurally, yeah.
Well, we're
Yeah.
in this thing.
What is your change?
I'm sorry, Chuck.
If you look at the version, he was removed in one version, he's now back in this version. And 2 earlier versions it did not appear.
Is that the apartment building in 5B? Just to remove it from 5B?
It was not in the code we
The
discussed.
vote was not completed because I think not everybody was listening. So let me step back.
It was in the 4.0 version.
Right.
And what is this?
This 4.1 is still there.
No, it wasn't.
You just printed this for the...
It was not in 4.0. And it wasn't.
Just a moment.
It wasn't in the previous, the one before that.
Let's make sure this is right.
Over the summer, before the summer, it was.
Sorry. Was this supposed to be? It should be. So what do I want to cross out? I'm going to cross out just this 18th. Okay. Councilor McBride, could you move to amend your motion that in addition to the 5 stated amendments that we would, I don't think I'm going to have any disagreement.
Wait a minute.
Okay. Well,
Taking apartment building out of the opportunities on Sure.
let's go back to discussion.
Wisconsin Square.
So in the 5B district, which is on Montgomery Avenue, apartment buildings were permitted. And then at some point in the 4.0, which was published in March, they were removed. And they probably just due to an oversight have reappeared. But now I'm hearing some debate that some
these
councilors
be-
would like it to stay. So
So these
let's,
the apartment buildings where the first floor had some sort of office and retail.
AB is pure apartment, right?
AB is apartment building type, MU is mixed-use building type. They're
It
two
would
different
keep the
building
mixed
types.
use, not allow pure apartment building.
But not pure.
All right. I thought you said you were taking, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying you're taking both of them out.
No.
So what we're discussing is-
is.
removing pure apartment buildings from the 5B district and permitting mixed use, that would be commercial use on the first floor and living units above.
Is that the goal? Not
No,
just
there
that.
aren't.
Right, that's the goal, to have vibrant retail, along Montgomery Avenue.
And to get the upstairs to.
That's right, we get to use the air. So would you like to make that amendment?
Amend the
4.1.
4.1,
With the 5 previously mentioned changes.
5 previously mentioned
And the
changes
6th,
to include excluding apartment buildings from the 5B district.
5B, okay. All right, that is what is on the table. And I'm going to ask for vote. All in favor of the motion that is on the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. It is 5 in favor, 1 opposed to move this form-based zoning code to a hearing. Mr. Solicitor, could you give us some background on potential dates for that hearing?
Well, today is March 14th. There needs to be 30 days for both planning commissions review of the county and Narberth. And that's once these changes are actually made to the document and submitted to them. It has to be 30 days from that date. From my calculations, the next meeting, regular meeting of council is the 11th. We're already outside of that 30-day requirement that needs to be procedurally enacted. So it would have to be after our next regularly scheduled council meeting. The only other requirements that would be needed would be 2 consecutive advertisements, at least a week before the meeting. And we would need to post throughout the borough the notices of the zoning map changes that affect those areas. And that needs to be done also a week before the hearing, at least a week before the hearing. So because it's my understanding that the advertisements usually go on Saturdays, those would have to be 2 consecutive Saturdays, advertising a hearing that's, again, more than 7 days past that Saturday, which would take us into the other week.
So what are we looking
So
at?
based upon that, 14 days, what day would you like to have? Now, we can also advertise for both a special meeting to also do the vote that same night. And I would recommend that being done.
I think that we should do it, whether council chooses to take advantage of that, the advertising cost would basically be the same, so we should give ourselves the option either way.
Correct, it would be a few more lines. 14. If this was advertised, if it really is based upon when we'd be able to get it to the planning commissions. When do we believe that we'd be able to make these changes and formally submit them to the planning commissions for their review?
Yeah, you just tell me when.
Let's aim for this Wednesday, end of business.
So if it was submitted to the planning commission on the 16th, April 15th is a Friday, that would be at least 30 days. So if this was advertised on April 2nd and April 9th, we'd be able to have the hearing the week of the 18th of April. And it really does not matter what day of that week.
Okay, I know there's a holiday that week for some people, so I would aim maybe for the beginning, Monday or Tuesday evening, the 18th or the 19th. I think everybody can take a look at their schedules and their calendars.
It could also be the following week as well. It has to be within 60 days of the advertisements.
Right. All right, I'll throw out April 18th. All who are available, raise your hands.
For 8 a.m., 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
It's fine.
2.
I'm good on either the 18th or 20th.
Charlie is no good in person or no good at all?
No good in person, unlikely good at all.
Okay.
God, that third week of the month is mine.
All right. And what if we were to move it to Monday, April 25th?
Fine.
Monday, April 25th.
It's the night before the election.
I'm out of town that day.
What's that?
I'm out of town that day.
Tuesday, April 26th is election day.
28th, 27th, 28th.
The 27th. How about the 28th? Thursday, the 28th?
Sure.
Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. All right, let's schedule our hearing for Thursday, April 28th. Mr. Solicitor, could you speak a little bit towards the rules involved with advertising an ordinance like this and when its rules might go into effect with people submitting for land use?
There's no slam dunk under the law. There is something called the pending ordinance doctrine, which has really only been going through the courts for use-based changes to a code, and clearly a lot of these changes are not use-based, they're dimensionally based. It seems that the same logic would apply, that once it's been expressed by the council that this ordinance is going to be going into effect, as long as it does actually go into effect when planned at that hearing, that you can't then quickly file those permits to get around them. I personally know of judges in Montgomery County who have said, I'm not going to listen to the pending ordinance doctrine. And then there are issues as to whether that doctrine would start from the advertisement date or from what would be today. So there are lots of gray areas, but needless to say, having it done earlier is a benefit, is an argument to make. If there was an issue that was to arise, to have it enacted today would provide us with a stronger support that those regulations that we're passing would need to be followed. But again, it really would depend upon what the permit is stating, or the land plan is stating, and how it conflicts, or if it conflicts, with the provision of our ordinance.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to our next item of business. Are there any other action items that council members would like to add to the agenda? All right, let's move on to number 7, informational. Mr. Manager, do you have a report?
I do, but I'll just submit the written report for your monthly reports.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Solicitor, do you have a report?
No additional report at this time. I did mention again that the zoning hearing board did uphold our zoning officer's interpretation based upon the driveway parking space, and they did deny the Hampton Avenue permit or application.
Okay, thank you. And I am going to submit the monthly reports of the library, the fire chief, building permit activity, the police chief. Tom, I did not see a police report. Do you have it?
Oh, it's here recorded.
Thank you. Treasurer's report and the tax collector report, as well as, I'm putting in this folder, our borough manager's written report, and all of those will be available to the public if they wish to see them. Come to our new favorite agenda item, comments for the good of council. Does anyone have any positive community news to report, or anything else?
The leprechaun hunt was a huge success.
It was a nice day.
It was a nice day, a huge success, and kudos to the Business Association and Ed Ridgway, as always, for making that just a terrific day. A lot of fun.
I believe you said we had over 600
Yeah.
kids participate in the hunt this year.
Which was pretty nice for, I mean, the weather was
Yeah.
good, but it wasn't, amazing, so that's very positive.
Good.
Anything else, anyone?
I don't know, it should, whether it's new business or
Okay.
if it's new business.
Okay, any old business? New business, Councilor Richmond.
So I want to just clarify with our solicitor that I seem to recall back in, they can hear me. I recall, I can't remember whether this was late fall or whatever, sometime last year, the idea of delayed demolition ordinance was discussed. And we could not figure out a way to do that, but we were told that when an application is put in, we have X number of days, and that we should wait until the last minute. So the question that I have is, because we're trying to prevent tear downs, and we're trying to maximize the opportunity that we have, or anyone would have, before any demolitions are approved, I just want to clarify, it's 15 days for residential, it's 30 days for commercial or mixed, non-residential, and when there's a reapplication, the timeline then starts over.
The UCC, which again is what we've adopted, says that the borough municipality in general has 30 days from the date of an application to make a decision. Once that decision is then made, if it was denied, the applicant would then have to reapply. So my interpretation, and I think it's pretty widely held, is that it would be another 30 days from that reapplication of that time. Because again, the idea is that the borough would need to look at the additional information provided and have the time to make a decision. Otherwise, you know, if you got a decision denying someone on the 29th, you would have 1 day to get it back. So that just doesn't make sense. So that would be correct. That it would be, whatever the time may be, it would be from the resubmission of that.
Does anyone know what, so the ordinance on Friday that was approved, not ordinance, the demolition permit that was approved, what I don't understand is, did we use our maximum allotted time to hold on to it, even with the reapplication? And are we now not doing that anymore? Like, have we decided to just approve them whenever we want?
I don't believe I made a recommendation that we wait till the last day. I think that the borough would be able to do that under the UCC. You have 30 days to do it. I'm unaware of when the reapplication was made. I wasn't even aware that a reapplication was made until
It's March 4th.
It was March 4th. So we would have had till April 4th. So I guess the reason I'm asking is because we had lots of discussion last fall about this delayed demolition and to give ourselves the maximum amount of time before we approve that. And I'm asking if we're changing our minds on that now, or are we trying to stick to keeping all those days in our favor so we can look at every last detail?
I think the important thing for us to do is to treat all applicants the same. And it is the discretion of council to tell the office, get them out as quickly as possible, you know, permits in general, or not, you know, use the maximum amount of time.
And I thought we did.
I think that for a residential demolition, there's a little bit of a difference between a residential and a commercial, not only the time difference, but that a residential demolition is often less technically complex. I know that the permit, you know, the borough said that it issued a demolition permit, and the first line of the permit is set up a fence and call the engineer to schedule an appointment. So unlike a demolition permit where it's kind of like, here you go ahead and get started, I think we all knew that nothing is going to happen to that building until there's a process that's going to play itself out, because it is a complex.
And I thought we
Take a look at this. This is actions prior to demolition that are
I didn't
required.
know that it was a resolution. I thought it was more of an agreement. Thank you.
Well,
I don't think it was a resolution.
It was not a
yeah,
resolution.
so,
The building and zoning committee made a request that the office send notifications to the neighbors of any buildings where there's been an application for
Was there was a
construction,
distance
which
within
is
a certain
demolition,
distance?
demolition,
Yeah, within a certain
demolition.
distance of
The
the,
neighbors of the building associated for demolition.
And wasn't
There
an
was-
application sent?
There were conversations about the time. That's what I recall. There were conversations about the time. I don't know that there was any kind of motion or agreement.
I remember a very detailed.
In my view, any kind of permit, whether it's for construction or demolition, is considered a construction permit. And I think all of us would want to be treated the same. You know, we kind of,
Well, no,
I mean,
I think we agreed.
if I were to file an application for construction or demolition of my home, I would want to be treated the same as everyone else. And I think my understanding is that
My
it's about
understanding
fairness.
was that within the framework of the public asking Borough Council last fall to do something about the tear downs, that there was a detailed conversation about what we can do, what tools do we have. And the only thing that came up was that we should direct the office to use the maximum amount of time within its, and that would be for everybody, not just one person or this or that person randomly, it'd be for all people. And we keep, and I remember Sean saying that it would be the Friday before, you know, it was due, so that if it was due, say, on next Wednesday, there'd be still a little time for there to be a reaction. It wouldn't literally be on the Wednesday. I remember that level of detail in the conversation, so I'm asking whether we're changing that, and if we are, why?
Well, why don't we take this as an opportunity to clarify our policy to the office as to what we would like them to do.
To me, I think it's exactly what we talked about a few months ago. We should just reiterate that any type of construction permit, be it a fence, be it a construction, be it a demolition, that the the borough was going to post it on the website that there's a permit request, and that we were going to not issue it till near the end of the time period. And that would give, it wouldn't give neighbors any right to speak up.
That's right.
But it would give neighbors the right to know that something is happening near them in case they have to or want to do any type of action. And we really spoke with them. When we go back to the minutes later, we'll find that we very clearly discussed this in that format that we described. So
Because there was a moratorium discussion, so we couldn't do the
couldn't do that
moratorium
because
because it was the
we couldn't do
maximum
it.
time. And that was part of the reason I brought that to our attention.
But the question, I have a question for the solicitor on this. The office is governed by the UCC, right? And that's the law, that's what they're going by as a guidebook when they do their job.
The permitting process.
The permitting, when they're doing the permitting process. And so the UCC basically says, and this is like, this gets to like how we, as a body, manage the office as the executive in the town, right? We've got a written set of rules that they work by, and that written set of rules says the only reviewer of these permit applications is the building inspector. Very clear about that, lists out all the character in the UCC, what are the things that the building inspector inspects, but that's their call, and it says you got up to whatever the different ranges of days are, up to that to do it. And usually within that, you're trying to provide, good level of service for permit applicants. If in addition to what's in the UCC, we want to give specific guidance to the office to, add rules on or stick to a consistently applicable rule for how to process an application, I don't know that having that in like meeting minutes cuts it. Then we need like a resolution or something that sort of gives written guidance.
It would need to be actually an ordinance. I mean,
It would need to be an ordinance.
If council wanted to pass an ordinance saying that we want every demolition permit to go through the mayor,
Right.
you could pass that ordinance, and then that system was set up, and if it didn't go through the mayor, that would then be issued in error, and that'd be reason to revoke it. Or that doesn't. My understanding is that doesn't exist.
How about in terms of timing?
So in terms of timing, whatever system council wants to set up,